Well, I'd like to wish everybody a good afternoon. It's our noon start time, and this is for our Lunch and Learn today, where we just want to update everybody on the most recent information on Columbus Public Schools' response to growth. This will have a lot of the same information that we presented last Wednesday night online, with just a few small updates. Again, we are doing a public presentation tonight at 6:30 p.m. at Columbus High School. We will do it in the concert hall, and we're always happy to take questions in the chat box today, as well as in person. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their lunch to be here today. As many of you know, the district has talked consistently about some of the growth in the community that's kind of pending, and some of it's going on right now. Last spring, we provided a lot of updated information. As of August 1, we know there's going to be 1,800 new doors in Columbus by 2029. And the first development on A Street is going to be completed by fall of 26, which means we'll see some of those students in Centennial Elementary, in our middle school, and in our high school. The housing expansion looks to be enough for about 3,500 people to be added to the community. And as of 2024, the census showed 25,126 people in Columbus. Now, all of the information above includes all the residential construction, but we've identified 5 of the largest developments, and I'm going to show you on the next page so you can see how that's going to impact our school district. Now, this is a similar growth boom that we're expecting that occurred from 2014 to 2019. And during that time, Columbus Public Schools grew by about 800 students. So since 2009, our enrollment has been fairly steady, staying within that 4,200 range. But with this next growth spurt, we're expecting to grow from 350 to 550 more students, and that's by 2030. So when we're looking at the areas that are impacting the district, we're looking at 5 developments. One that will impact Lost Creek Elementary, and that's called the North Creek development. It's by Highland Church. And there's going to be 110 doors added into that condo and apartment style complex. The next 2 we're looking at are Farmview, which is finishing of duplexes just west of the airport. Those students would go to North Park. And the one that's had the biggest influence on us as a district, we found out last September, is the Cottonwood development. Now, the Cottonwood development is just west of the Parkway, just west of Walmart. That development's going to be 570 doors, almost a city within a city. And that all of those students would go to North Park. We're expecting that to have the biggest impact on our enrollment. Down south, we have 2 developments that will be impacting Centennial Elementary. The first one is the Meadow Ridge Vitality Village development. That's the one where a lot will be done by 2026 or next fall. That's 350 units or doors. And then the Quail Meadows development, which is 70 units, those would also go to Centennial. Now, you notice the 2 elementaries not impacted are Emerson. Emerson is already at capacity, and it's a 2-track, which means 2 teachers per grade. And then West Park, which is also at capacity, is 2 teachers per grade, or a 2-track building. And so we're fortunate that the 2 that are at full capacity are not being impacted, but we don't have the growth in those other elementaries as well. And so that's what's really prompting a lot of our conversations to handle the growth. So what's the current impact? Where we sit today, you can't get into your neighborhood elementaries if they're full, and that's by grade. And right now in 4 of our 5 buildings, we do not allow any more enrollment after the start of the school year. The only one that's the exception is Centennial. And as you can see, after next fall, when the new houses are open, we anticipate that all of our elementaries will be at capacity. Now, we still have to find space for people, and we will, but right now there's no guarantee you can get into your neighborhood school. We don't have empty rooms, and so the biggest issue in our elementary schools is we can't expand sections for grades. We've either got to get larger class sizes, or we have to start eliminating some other offerings in those classrooms, some of which we're required to offer by Rule 10. So right now, we're keeping our class sizes between 20 and 26, and that is classroom or section sizes. Except for kindergarten, we're fortunate enough to have been able to hire an extra kindergarten teacher because we had space, and we're able to keep those numbers relatively below 20. Without the additional space, the other concern is that we'll grow to 28 to 35 students in each teacher's classroom, and that would be the average class size in the middle school. And so those numbers are a little bit of a concern. Right now, we have the largest middle school in Nebraska. We have 1,207 students in grades 5-8. If you compare that to Norfolk, Norfolk has 1,253 in those same grades. They're divided into two buildings, a 5-6 and a 7-8. So you can see that by us moving the fifth grade out, which is kind of one of our plans, it's going to bring our middle school size down to a manageable number. We've done some work on looking at class size impact. The Hanover study had some key findings that we've looked at. Really, there's meaningful benefits when you can reduce the class size to 15 students or fewer, which is one of the things we've been able to do in kindergarten. We're very excited to see what the impact is that going to be on our new learners. Why kindergarten? We only had 40% of our kindergartners had any preschool before entering school. If you can keep your class sizes between 16 to 25, that really becomes your optimum number because there is no measurable impact, either positive or negative, which means you're hitting the targeted point. As you can see from some of the other concerns, the greatest benefits for this is in K3, which is a lot of our focal point of this conversation, particularly for minority and low-income students. So bigger also means for the elementary that our PEs will have larger class sizes or we'll have to cut back on offerings. And that's because in 3 of the 5 buildings, they share the lunchroom and the gymnasium. And so that restricts the amount of time we can have for PE and or can really shorten the amount of time we have for lunch. Music, which they offer right now in its own room, and music rooms are set up for that learning environment. We'd either have to reduce the offering or have the music teacher travel around and try to teach music in a regular classroom. For the middle school, right now, we're really concerned about managing our lunch periods. 1,200 students to get through in a day is a lot. If we start to add more students in there, it's really going to make our lunches earlier or later, along with having some pretty big class sizes. We don't have extra space at the middle school. Right now, just operationally, that number of students causes a lot of strain, not only on class sizes, but just on the operations of the building. So what are we proposing? And what came from a lot of work over the last year and really came from parents and staff was to look at a grade 4 or 5 building. And so it was one of 3 final projects that we researched, and it really came to the forefront as the best solution for students in our community. And the nice thing about a 4 or 5 building is basically you're looking at 95 to 97,000 square feet. Our building would have capacity for 800 students. We've looked at Brookings, South Dakota. They have a 4 or 5 building. We took a group of 16 people up there this summer, including board members and staff and maintenance people, to look at that building and look at everything from how the classrooms are arranged to how it functions to schedules. And really that group came back and said a 4 or 5 building is a great fit for Columbus Public Schools. It's great what we can do for our 4th and 5th graders. Now, Fremont and Norfolk, they have 5, 6 buildings, but the building, again, would be a great example. And so we'll take some time to look at both of those buildings as well. Our intermediate building would be a separate facility. So this is not part of another building. It would be its own freestanding building. So the 4th and 5th graders would be together, but they wouldn't be with any other students. This building will have a playground and outdoor education space, which is critical for the activities that we have going on during the day. If we can keep it in a central location, we can save on infrastructure. And so as we've looked at a lot of potential sites, we want to make sure that it's responsive to where our students are, and also that we don't have to develop the entire infrastructure that increases the cost of the project. 4th and 5th graders developmentally and curricularly are very similar. And this really allows us to increase options for both groups. So for example, 5th graders now have the opportunity to gain back Title I services or high ability learner programs. Our 4th graders are going to get some offerings like technology and engineering, music, and visual arts. So it really becomes the best of both worlds for supporting the learning of 4th and 5th graders and expanding some of their offerings at an early age. We currently have 575 students in grades 4 and 5. So this creates immediate space at all of our elementary schools as well. If this passes and we move them together by moving the 4th grade out, it creates enough space for 4 more teachers in each grade level across the district in K3. It also allows us to grow middle school grades 6-8 while still having 800 seats at the intermediate building, or enough space to grow by another couple hundred students from our current numbers. When you build a new site, The NDE and the TIOSA, which is the state aid formula, calculates what's called a 2-year new site funding. This is how you're able to add new staff to the district for that building. Now, for our district, it's not going to be all new staff. 4th and 5th grade teachers would move into that building. But there's a lot of support people that we would have to add to that building, or some specialties that we don't currently have. So that 2-year site allowance allows us 2 years where the state's going to help us fund that until we can get it calculated into our budget formula in a couple of years. We know one of the biggest challenges with any place we place a building in Columbus is traffic. And so we're currently contracted out with Benish to do a traffic study. The traffic study started last week. We know there's questions. Why are you doing the traffic study now with construction going on Highway 30? We have to start the construction, or we have to start the traffic study now so we can have the data to share with voters before any bond could potentially be voted on with all the information. And again, with construction going on, we also know this would be the worst case scenario for traffic. And so it's going to help us determine the best location for the building. So right now, the main site being studied is on the middle school site. It would be on the north side of the property. The maroon square is an example of the footprint being studied. Now that could shift a little bit east, west, or north. It's not going to shift south. We don't want this next to or connected to the middle school. The area in white is the current east parking lot, both north and south parts. That's being studied because all of that would be developed, if that's chosen as the site, for the best possible traffic flow and drop-off situation for both sites. Keep in mind, 5th graders are already at the middle school, so moving the 5th graders to this building doesn't create an increase in traffic. We're studying the impact it would be to have the 4th graders there. So I've talked about the traffic study, and here's an example right now of what Benish is looking at. They've already identified prior to the study and working with us what key challenges that we're looking at. You can see that we're studying traffic flow all the way around the building. All the intersections flow in and out of the traffic, or in and out of the parking lot. We're looking at all of those. The city's been cooperative, and so this study is going to expand even a couple more blocks outside of this, recognizing that if we can improve the efficiency around the building, it's going to, whether we build the intermediate building there or not, it's going to improve congestion around the building during the 15 minutes at the beginning of the day and the 15 minutes at the end of the day when we're starting and ending school. So what's the preliminary data if Columbus Public Schools is going to do an intermediate building? Well, we would have to do a construction bond. It's our only statutory option for construction with a public school. The project, based on all the data we have, would be $43.6 million. And that's all the way from turning the first shovel of dirt to unlocking the key and welcoming students in the fall of 2028. So based on current valuation data, a $43.6 million bond would impact the levy as follows. So last year, we had a $1.13 total levy for the school district. This year, the levy will be around $1.08.5. And if the bond would pass, next year's levy would go back to being $1.13. While that's the same as last year's levy, there is a true net impact because our levy's going down this year. So that 4.5 cents increase, if we pass the bond, is about $45 for every $100,000 of valuation per year. If you want to calculate how that impact would be for you, you can take your valuation times 0.00045. That'll show you the total increase in taxes. If you divide it by 12, you can do the monthly impact. I will tell you that on average, for an average home in Columbus, looking in that $300,000-$400,000 range, you're probably looking somewhere in the neighborhood of $15, $12 to $15 for a monthly impact. But I think everybody should look at how that impacts you individually, knowing that is a part of a lot of decisions. Again, staffing, not something we're going to have to worry about because that's covered under that New Year site allowance. After 2 years, it's calculated into our budget formula. By that time, there should be minimal to no impact in our budget or how it affects taxpayers. There's been conversation about why an intermediate building. Well, an intermediate building really is an elementary school, just a little larger with some offerings. But it doesn't have the specialized offerings or the need for athletic and activity facilities. Like there are 2 schools that we've been able to look at that would be similar to what we would need to build. If we built another middle school, we're looking at minimum 555 million and as much as 60 million if we were going to build something similar to Blue Stem Middle School in Omaha. That would be about the size we need. That doesn't include any infrastructure or, depending on where you build it, what that means for the site. So at 55 to 60 million, that's a substantial increase over the intermediate building. A new high school, which Columbus is not in need of at this point. Just to give you an idea, Bennington is building a high school that's going to be roughly the same square footage as what Columbus High School is. That bond passed at 110 million. So you can see the sharp increase in costs. So these are all factors in what we're trying to do to find the most effective, efficient, student-centered, and cost-efficient way to make available seats for the school district. So some long-term discussion, what does passing the bond and construction mean for Columbus Public Schools? Well, the intermediate building would open in 2028. We know that starting next fall, we're going to see some of the construction completed, but the bulk of it will be completed in 28, 29. And so we'll match the timeline for construction and for growth. Creates 800 new seats. And believe it or not, since 1965, none of the district's construction has actually created new seats. The last time the district expanded a new building with new seats was Lost Creek. Now, since 1965, we've done some construction projects, but you have to remember we often build something a little bigger, move some people around, and then close a building. And so we've created a minimal number of seats because there's always been a relatively small growth in Columbus. We're in a situation where we need to create a large number of seats, like 800, to really deal with the growth that we see coming in the next 3 to 5 years. There's no other projects associated with this bond. It's all for the intermediate building. That would be clear in any bond ballot, but just want to be really upfront and transparent with everybody. We hear a lot about losing our small town feel, especially in our schools. And our priority is to keep small neighborhood elementary schools and address the size of the middle school. We want to have our schools still have a small town neighborhood feel, and we feel like the intermediate building helps us accomplish that. The Third Avenue property that people are aware we bought a couple of years ago was the site for a potential new elementary school. And when we did the bond and attempted a bond in 2023, that would still be used for a future elementary school. If you recall on the chart with the heat map, that would be out near the Cottonwood development. And the Cottonwood development is out by the Parkway, 570 doors. We anticipate at some point that will probably expand. When that's full and expands, that would be a perfect time for the district and the community to consider an elementary out in that Third Avenue area. Again, that meets with the neighborhood school philosophy. And so the timing of that would really be based on when all of that housing is complete and filled. So here's a little bit about where we're at for a roadmap. So all the prior work we've done, which is a year of meeting with the community, different focus groups. I've had the chance to go speak with a lot of different groups in the community, and I appreciate that invitation. It would always be welcome to come speak to any group, no matter how big or how small, just to answer questions. But we've updated enrollment data, discussed growth with the community. And in June to August, we've worked to determine what the best final project is, what the cost, set up the traffic study, and then brought on experts to help us and guide us so that we're making clear decisions with all the correct information. This upcoming Monday, the board will be asked to vote on a resolution to call a bond referendum and election for $43.6 million to build and equip a grades 4 and 5 intermediate school. If the board passes that resolution on Monday, the election will be November 4th. That'll be the date ballots are due for the special election. We'll wait to hear whether it's mail-in or ballot box. Most special elections have been mail-in, but the date would be November 4th. And it's open to all registered voters in the Columbus Public School District. And so if you're not a registered voter, you have until October 17th to register here in Platte County if you live in the school district in order to participate in this special election. So quickly, I want to share who we have brought on board, just kind of full transparency about our team. From the district, myself is serving as the district lead. Mr. Leonard Kwapnowski, who's our Director of Operations and Facilities, is providing district oversight on how we're going about things. And we're using Nicole Anderson, who's our communications person, to do all the communications for the district. Part of the reason we have chose to keep all of that stuff Local this is a Columbus project, and we need people who completely understand Columbus and are centered around the community. We're fortunate to have Derek Sharman, who's a parent at Centennial and owns a business here in town, who's heading up our community committee. Our community committee are volunteers who are committed to help get the message out about the bond and about the project, and who have been a part of a lot of our focus groups. I know if you want to volunteer, you can contact Derek. He would be welcome to have all the help that they can have to carry the message. The district, of course, has hired Benish. Dan Carpenter is our lead for the traffic study and has been on site. Had a chance to meet with Dan a couple times. Very pleased with the work that Benish is showing initially. We've hired Clark and Enerson. They're doing some pre-bond work and engineering and architecture work for us. As you can see from the drawing, a maroon box isn't exactly state-of-the-art architect work, but right now they're just doing a lot of sizing and spacing and determining what we're able to do from an engineering standpoint. We don't plan to invest in any official drawings until we get the bond passed. We will do some really generic markups over the next couple months to show what 95 to 97,000 square feet can look like, but we're not going to make an investment fiscally until the bond passes. We do use Northland Securities, so Jay Spearman, Tobin Buchanan is our bond underwriters right now. Their service is simply to tell us the fiscal impact of doing the bond. And so there's no cost for the pre-bond services with Northland. And then the last thing is we will bring on in October a construction manager at risk. They will simply work with our architect and engineering firm on some sketches of what a building could look like. There'll be no deep work done unless the bond passes. And so really for the construction manager at risk, their contract wouldn't start unless the bond passes. So this is the team we've assembled to get us through to the bond date, and the team then that we would use to hit the ground running should we pass the bond. Now, I do want to share, here's some of the resources. So if you want to link to the chamber information, where we got the census information, the Hanover study, or the voter registration website, these are available. These will also be available on any of the stuff that we send out so that people can double check resources that we're using to kind of provide this information. So at this point, I am welcome to start taking any questions that anybody might have. And Nicole Anderson is nice enough to be taking care of our chat box right now. So if you want to put something in the chat on Facebook, we'll be happy to answer those questions. Again, really appreciate everybody taking some time today to do that. I want to go back real quick and just show everybody this heat map again. I know when I was talking about the Cottonwood development, that's number 3. We own some land near there. And so that right now is earmarked for an elementary when all of that red box would be filled in with a residential area. It would also pick up some of the spot out there. So just to kind of help everybody with that. So the first question we have is what happens if the bond doesn't pass? The district has tried in 2023, 2024 to run a bond election to address growth. We have probably the best growth data we've had over those 2 or 3 years right now. We're bringing forward a plan that puts 800 new seats in the district in the most cost-efficient way. If the bond doesn't pass, anything else that we bring forward isn't going to be a long-term solution. And we've heard from the community that when you bring something forward to pass and it's not a long-term solution, they're a little disappointed in where that outcome is down the road. And so it probably means we're going to have to look at what we can do with the existing space. It's going to make for awful large class sizes. The district, due to safety, security, some codes, and sheer cost, won't be bringing in trailers to the school district. We researched that, was one of the big suggestions last spring. Trailers are pretty much like lighting money on fire. And if a community isn't going to pass a bond, which is an investment in kids, an investment in the community, an investment in the schools, I can't imagine that they would be fiscally okay with us throwing money away on a trailer. So if it doesn't pass, we're going to be in a bind. There isn't a plan B right now because we feel like this is the best solution for our school and community. How long does it take to pay off a bond? Typically, a bond is 25 to 30 years. To pay off. We have one outstanding bond right now. Compared to other districts our size, I was doing a little research. looking at like a Millard, an Elkhorn, a Fremont, people who have done some building lately, our bond indebtedness shows real well against those comparisons. Now, when you have growth, and so that's, if you look at, Kearney's another good example. When you have that kind of growth, your bond indebtedness doesn't always stay flat. So about 25 to 30 years, typically the impact on taxpayers goes down. I came in 2020. I was the business manager when I started here at Columbus. We refinanced the high school bond at that point. We cut off about 11 to 13 million in interest the way that we refinanced it, knocked the payments down a little bit, but we shortened the amount of time. And so we knocked 5 years off of the payments with that refinance and paid a portion of the bond off early. And so there's always those opportunities throughout the life of a bond, depending on the market. But typically the upfront, you're looking at a 25 to 30-year note. And again, just a reminder, because that's a great question, is what's the impact? So, we're still paying off a bond now, and $1.13 this last school year is 9 cents lower than when the bond was passed. For the high school, $1.08 is going to make it almost 16 cents lower. And so even going back to $1.13, if we pass this, it's not back to the high school bond level. And so as the community grows, it does tend to spread out that cost. Recognize that having to do this through property taxes is always a difficult ask. And so we've tried to be very respectful and cognizant of that challenge for our community as we worked with all the different groups to come up with the best plan. Again, we'll kind of be wrapping up here in the next couple of minutes. If we get any other questions late, we'll try to respond to them on Facebook, just like we did before. Again, we'll be having an in-person meeting tonight at 6:30 p.m. at Columbus High School. We've appreciated the opportunity to present last week and this week online. This makes a great way for people to gather information who maybe aren't able to come to the meetings. And again, if you are part of a group that you would like to invite myself or somebody from the school to come visit, no matter how big or small, we're always happy to come and take questions. We feel like it's our duty to provide everybody the best information possible and trust in our community to help us make the best decision going forward. So again, thank you for taking some time during your lunchtime today. I want to wish everybody a great day. And again, thank you very much.